For many years, the internet has asked, can you restring a Hopscotch Hill doll? And based on what I researched when I got my Hopscotch Hill Gwen doll back in 2017, the answer was no. My sister found a blog around that time where somebody had managed to get the doll back together, but they said it was not worth it, that they spent like 2 hours just on one limb, that the doll was loose after, just not quite as loose, and they basically didn't recommend doing it. That was the only person on the whole of the internet that I could find that had even attempted to restring a Hopscotch Hill doll. So for all these years, I have just left my Gwen doll loose. But when I was re-photographing her for Flickr and changing her clothes and all that, I realized just how loose she had gotten. She was no longer just loose, she was dangling. I will insert a clip here of how loose she was. So this is Gwen before. You can see that her legs are literally dangling out of her sockets here. And her arms are also pretty loose, as is her head, but it's her legs that are the real problem. She's like a marionette. And she was already loose when I got her back in 2017, but it has only proceeded to get worse. So basically, she was going to fall apart, and I knew the day had come. I re-scoured the internet. I still couldn't find anything. That one blog post that wasn't even a full tutorial, and I thought, somebody's got to try it. I'm not the best at restringing, but you know what? I'm going to do it. I am going to make a tutorial. So I have successfully restrung my Gwen doll. She can freestand on her own. She can hold poses. Everything is really tight. This was a learning experience for me. Normally I film tutorials when I have done a certain like repair or technique many times, but this is my only Hopscotch Hill doll. She's the only one I've found like in the wild, and I thought it would be a waste to the doll community if I did not document this process, because I don't know when I will get the chance to restring another one of these dolls again. I suppose the next time I find one, since they're notorious for being loose. And you cannot send them to the American Girl Doll Hospital to get fixed. They stopped servicing these dolls, I think in 2007 or 2008, which makes it even worse, because if there's no tutorials and you can't pay to have the doll fixed at the doll hospital, what do? So I documented my process. I made this video, and I also took pictures of everything along the way. And so there will be a photo/written tutorial on my Flickr, which you don't need a Flickr to view. I will link it below. And there is this video tutorial. Now I just want to say a few disclaimers. I am not like a doll restringing expert. I have restrung many American Girls in my day, but in my opinion, they're really easy. They're not complicated. I have limited experience restringing other dolls, and honestly, I did not find restringing her that difficult, even though I was going in mostly blind. Now, I appreciate the person who tried to restring a Hopscotch Hill in the past, who took pictures and stuff, because I had some idea of like what was going on inside this doll. However, because they didn't do a step-by-step process, and they didn't even bother with the restringing the head of the doll because they were so fed up, there were parts that I had to go in blind while doing this. And for instance, I accidentally mixed up like which upper leg and which upper arm went with which lower arm and lower leg, so I had to take some things apart. I also realized that their way of putting the legs on was harder than it needed to be, so I had to go back and redo it a different way, and I had no idea how to do the head, and so I tried a couple different things, and I finally found one way that's like really easy and really effective. My Gwen didn't even really need her head redone. It was probably the tightest part in her body. It was like a little loose, but I could have left it. But I took her head apart just for you guys, just so that if you are someone out there that has a Hopscotch Hill doll and she is loose, no matter which body part is loose, this video will show you how to do it. And you do not need a lot of expensive supplies, and I don't have a lot of experience restringing like dolls that like this, so if I can do it, you can do it too. The most important thing that I'm gonna stress here is, number one, do this on a day when you are like, you have patience, and if you mess up or you get a little bit confused, that you're not gonna like get really angry, because I actually found restringing my sister's Magic Attic Club Allison doll much more annoying and frustrating. I did it yesterday at the time I'm filming this intro, and I was way more upset and stressed out about doing that than Gwen, and she's actually probably more complicated. So being in a better mood and like feeling better definitely is the combo you want for this. And there's gonna be a lot of like heating up the limbs in hot water. And this is the thing that I think the other person made the mistake with, and I had done it in the past with American Girls. You need actual boiling water. Like, don't put it in the microwave. Don't wait until there's just a few bubbles. You want it to be fully boiling. Put it in like a kettle, or boil the water on the stove and then put it into a bowl, because you need this plastic to be squishy, 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 squishy in order to get the little pieces out, the little cups inside, because she's got cups much like an American Girl, like an 18-inch American Girl. And the squishier the plastic, the easier it is going to be for you to get your tool in there and to pull it out. And having a really tiny pair of pliers helps as well. So I hope that this video can help at least one other Hopscotch Hill doll out there. This is long overdue, but I'm glad I waited, because I do have a little bit more restringing experience now than I did when I got Gwen. If you want to know how I fixed this doll, keep watching. To restring Hopscotch Hill doll, you are going to need elastic cord. This is 4mm. I bought it to do a Magic Attic Club doll too. You can go a little smaller than this, but don't go any bigger, because this is probably the biggest type of cord that will fit inside their narrow parts. I bought mine off of Amazon because I couldn't find it like just at Walmart. This is marine grade bungee cord, so it's stronger because it's supposed to stand up to like UV damage and being outside and all of that, and it's very stretchy. I typically use bungee cord when restringing dolls. So you could probably get this at like a sporting goods store if you wanted to get it in person. Scissors, an assortment of like needle nose pliers and pliers. These ones are especially handy. I had to buy these special because I figured I'd need something really pointy to get into her narrow parts. This has a 1mm tip, but it's nice to have a few different sizes, especially because you use these to bend the washers. Some very pointy tweezers. These are just to help you pull the cord through. A crimping tool. This is optional, but I like to use this when clamping down the washers. You can just use regular pliers if you want. Then washers. So I'm going to use these in place of the metal crimps that come on Hopscotch Hill dolls or American Girls. I bend these and clamp them down. I use the number 10 size, and when I ran out of those, I used the 3/16 size. They're pretty small. Now, you don't have to use these. You can use actual metal inserts or anything you can think of. You can even just knot the cord if you want. And you can also use zip ties, which I used one of these for her neck. You might want one of those in order to do the head. Hemostats are optional, and then some really thin wire. This is just copper fishing line, I think. That was my dad's. This is optional too. This just helps guide the cord through the small parts of the doll. It just makes it a little bit easier, as I learned the hard way by struggling for a long time. And you'll also need a bowl and boiling water through various stages of this. So I'm going to cut her strings, and we'll see what happens here. I'm really nervous about this, but it has to be done. And you can feel like the cup inside here. Ooh. For this part, I got a big bowl. I had my kettle of boiling water that I poured in, and I plopped all of the limbs that had cups inside into the bowl to sit until they were squishy, 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 like insanely squishy. They're going to feel rubbery instead of hard plastic. I didn't dunk her whole head in because I didn't want to mess up her hair. So there was a cup in her head, 2 cups in her pelvis, and then a cup in each lower arm and a cup in each lower leg. So she has a lot of parts, which is very different than your average American girl. So you can see how I showed in real time how easy those things popped out. That's because they were squishy, and I had a very tiny pair of pliers to get in there. Of course, the cups got a little bit chewed up from the pliers. That's going to happen. That happens with regular American girls. But this was something that I figured might have been the problem with that blog post I read, that the person who wrote it just hadn't soaked the limbs in hot enough water. I mean, it is a little hard to find the cups, like to separate them from the walls of the arms when digging them out because they're so skinny. But if you just jiggle them around a bit with the string, you can see where the edge is and you can pull them up. So it really wasn't that bad. This was the part I feared the most, but it wasn't bad. So now that I've heated up all the parts and removed them, I'm going to show you what we have here so you have an understanding of how it all goes together. So inside her head was this plate. It goes in round side up, and there's like strings that loop around it, and that connects into this guy, which was sitting in her neck like so. And then her arms, between the arms inside there was this little tube that like the string fed through. I don't really know if it serves much of an important purpose, but it was between them. And then in her little forearms at the top were these 2 cups. They sit inside. They're like little funnels, I guess. They sit inside like so. And there would be like a knot and a metal clamp there. Inside her hips were these 2 cups. They were strung independently. And these are her upper legs. And then in her, at the top of her calves, there were these 2 cups, 2 little funnels, and they are the same size. So we have a total of 4 little funnels, 2 large cups, 2 bars, a neck plate, and a head plate, and of course, like the rest of the limbs. So now we have to do the arms. Now this is where it gets a little bit more complicated because these are connected. There aren't any cups on the inside. So we need a piece of cord that's long enough to run like from one arm down to the other. And it's better to have extra than not enough. Where I have my like pre-bent washer. Gonna leave like an inch of tail. Use my crimping tool. Clamp it down. And then we're gonna put the narrow end butting up against it because this is going to go into the forearm here, and then it's going to run up the body. So we only need to prep this guy. And this is an extra step you don't have to do, but I do it sometimes when restringing dolls. So you can see that like the bungee cord gets a little bit frayed. So I will just melt the edges so that way it's not so frayed. So at this stage we're going to have the 2 upper legs and the 2 upper arms that we're not touching right now. We don't need them. We have the 2 hip cups, which again, we don't need at this time. These 2 rods that go inside, we don't need those. And 1 leftover cup. So as I said at the beginning of this tutorial, I had to make some modifications. So this part is a little inaccurate. So at this stage, you're not going to have the neck pieces tied together. I figured out another way of doing that. And you're only going to have 1 cord prepped, the longest one to go from one arm to the other with the cup. That's the only thing you're going to be doing. So you'll have 3 extra cups at this stage, not just 1 like I mentioned before, and then the 2 neck pieces will still be separate, and then you'll have like the upper and lower limbs and the torso. I hope that makes sense. I'm sorry because I had to like fix some of my mistakes. I didn't have the whole doll disassembled to like re-show it correctly, but I'm gonna walk you through everything, so hopefully it makes sense. So we're gonna reheat more water. We want it to be really rubbery. And now I'm gonna push this stuff in. All the way in. So again, I only needed to heat up the arm. Ignore the other limbs that are soaking because, like I said, I realized that the way that the person had done the legs didn't make sense. It was really difficult to get them in, so I had to do them a different way. Same with the neck, which I literally had no clue how to do. So it is going to be a little tricky getting the cups back into the tight spaces, so even with it being really flexible, so you'll probably need to use like your pliers, the tips of them, just to shove it in to make sure that they're in all the way, because if they're not inserted all the way, they'll pop right back out, and I had that problem with the neck actually. Alright, so now we have the arms. So we need to make sure that we have the right arm, the right hand. So just to clarify how the arms go together, you want, for the arms, unlike the legs where you want the slot in the back because of how the knee bends, you want the slot in the front. I made this mistake at some point when I was doing Gwen, and I had to take apart the arms right when I was at the finishing stage and redo it. So we want the slot facing the front. So we're going to need to do the same thing. So this was my first attempt at doing the arms. I accidentally had reversed the upper arms. So, like I said, I didn't have a picture to go off of, and I only had the 1 doll, so I didn't have like an assembled one for reference. So I made the mistake and swapped the upper arms, which created problems because they have slots for how like the elbows are supposed to bend. So you want the slot facing forward. I'll show a clip like when I caught my mistake and I fixed it. I'll explain to you how it goes. But yeah, this is me doing it the wrong way, but it's still the actual technique of pulling the cord through is the same. You can see it's a little bit difficult. I was trying a lot of different things, and I actually found that using some wire and helping me funnel it up was easier because this cord is pretty thick and the arm has a slight bend and it's a really tight space. So that's something you can do. You can see how much easier it was when I had the wire. I'm going to feed it through this spacer. I think I might need both of them. Not entirely sure. So we're going to have something that looks like that. Alright, so I've fed it through to the upper arm, and if you are confused about the orientation of which upper arm goes where, because I messed up, which is why some of the clips you might see the arm in a slightly different position, it'll go in nice and easy. You won't need to heat it up to get the shoulder joints in. So, and the slots should be facing forward, so this is the front of the doll, so her arms can do this. So now we are going to do the cups. We're going to slide this cup on so that the narrow point is pointing down, because that's what we're going to insert into the forearm. And then we're going to put the washer on. And we're going to put the washer on. and we're gonna pull tension, and I like to basically see if I can pose the arm and if it holds before I clamp down, because you want it to be tight, but you don't want it to be so tight that the doll like can't move at all and that the cord is too stretched. You can see that's how her arm is supposed to bend. I did it wrong the first time. And I'm gonna wait for the water to heat up and we'll reassemble. So I heated the water back up. Ignore the other limbs. Like I said, I did the legs the way that the blog showed and realized that I couldn't get them back on the body, and I also messed up the neck because there was no reference for that. So what I'm doing in this slowed down clip here is I'm putting the lower arm onto that cup that I showed you. It does take a little bit of effort. I find if you just kind of like twist it on as best you can and then grab pliers and poke the cup in the rest of the way, it works. And again, the limbs have to be really, really, really squishy in order for you to do this. And I'm sorry that like you can't get a perfect angle of it in the camera, but it's very difficult to like film this by yourself when you're using a tripod and when I'm like contorting my body in all sorts of positions to try to shove the cup back in, but that's how I did it. Alright, so now I need to prep the string. Now because of her multiple joints, this is going to have to be done in multiple stages, but basically I need a piece of cord that's going to run through the top of her calf. It's going to go through this cup right here, and then it's going to come out and knot there. I'm going to be using these tiny number 10 washers like I use on American Girl. When you lay them out flat, here, I'll show you one. When you lay them flat at the top here, they're about the same circumference as the funnel, so they're going to be like folded, so they should fit inside when this is all heated up. And what I did to prep that is I just took 2 pairs of pliers and I'm doing a slight bend. So the reference blog that I found that covered restringing these dolls, it wasn't a tutorial, but it kind of explained how the person got into the doll. I attempted to do it the way that she did, where she assembled these whole pieces with this like tight on top and then tried to put the whole thing in there. The problem is this needs to be like turned in a weird way to get back in the socket even when it's really squishy, and having this whole leg is very, very difficult. I couldn't do it. It is easier to stick this cup in the body without the legs. So this is how I recommend doing it. So you're going to take your bungee cord that you've clamped down, you're going to line up your cup with the round side facing the washer so that that's going to sit inside, and we'll take it from there. And just a reminder of all the components that go into the leg. You obviously have the socket from the torso. You have this cup that's going to go inside. You have the upper leg, the lower leg, and the funnel cup that's going to go inside this lower part. So they're going to have to sit for a minute, and then you'll know, like, you can see how squishy that is. Try to get the water out. And then this is the difficult part. Cram it in there, and then we have to get it in the proper position. So there you go. That was so much easier than trying to put the whole leg on. Do not try to put the whole leg on unless you are really confident you can, because even just looking at the tutorial or the blog, I thought that was kind of a weird order of operations. Alright, so now we have to thread the leg. So it can be tricky getting this cord down to the other side of the leg What I like to do is I'll take a thin piece of wire. This is just like some kind of copper fish line that my dad had that I use for doll projects. I fold it in half and make this little loop at the top, and then I'm going to feed it from the kneecap up to the top, and then I'm going to use these really tiny tweezers to grab it. So now I'm going to have a loop, and then I'm going to wrap. Gonna kind of wrap there we go. See, so much easier doing that than trying to feed it through. We are going to reattach the lower part of the leg. So we're going to want the cup with the narrow end, the funnel going down, so this wide part is at the top, like so. And then we're going to want the pre-bent washer with the flat side pushing against it. And this is where like you're going to add the tension that you need. So this is how it's going to look. And you're going to trim that down, and then we're going to reheat the water and pop this back on. It's so much easier putting this lower part of the leg on rather than getting the whole like leg in up here. Right, and we have the lower leg heating up in the water now. I've trimmed down. You want it really squishy here to like help shove the cup in the rest of the way. Alright, so I've made sure that it's popped back in place. Okay, so for the neck, I'm going to start with the lower part of the joint. This goes inside the body. I put a piece of bungee cord, like looped it around because you can see there's this plastic bit in the middle. And then I'm going to use the zip tie and pull it not all the way tight, but mostly tight, just so it's an added stopper, so that, because there was a little plastic piece that broke in here that I'm not sure what purpose it served, but it might have been to keep it in place, so that way this cord doesn't just pop out. I heated the neck up in hot water so it's really squishy, and I pushed that joint all the way in. You want the skinny part like down and push it all the way in. You don't want it sitting in this rim, otherwise it's just going to pop out when you move her head. So now we are going to feed the two pieces of bungee cord into this neck cup, and you want the round part facing up because that's where her head is going to go. And then I'm going to have to tie this with a lot of tension. This is where hemostats might come in handy, or another zip tie. Alright, and so I'm going to have to like tie it very tightly. And then I'm going to trim these tails down. And last but not least, we're going to reattach her head. I did not put her whole head in the bowl because I didn't want to mess up her hair. You just need the like neck hole, so like her jaw area, to sit in the water so it gets nice and squishy. I recommend doing the head last. Even if you want to put the neck joint in ahead of time, just attach the head last because you're going to have to soak so many parts of the body to get the arms and legs on. You don't want her head being in the way. I learned that from my previous attempts, and you want the body to be cooled down before you stick the head on, otherwise it's harder to do. And now we are done with Gwen. You can see when I move her around, she even has some spring in her now. She can hold poses. Her neck's also tighter. And here's a clip of her freestanding by herself. She's holding a pose, she's standing. In all the years I've had her, she couldn't even come close to standing on her own. And when I recently retook her pictures for my Flickr, she was so loose that I couldn't even get her to lean against something. I had to use a doll stand, and she was limp in that. So, yes, you can restring them, and you can get them nice and tight. So, Gwenny is all ready to go. Her braids are a little wet because they got wet from the hot water, and I redid them and put some gel in there. But she's nice and tight now. She can hold poses. This is the first time she's ever been able to do this since I got her back in 2017. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and that it could be helpful. This was my first time restringing a Hopscotch Hill doll. They're kind of hard to come by in the wild. She's the only one I've actually found like thrifting. So I didn't want to waste this opportunity and not film it because there literally aren't any tutorials that I could find on Hopscotch Hill doll restrings. So I'm sorry if like there was some weird editing or a little bit of incongruity, because I had to try out a few different things and I was trying to film everything not knowing if a step would work or not, just because I wanted to make sure I captured it all. But you can restring them. And if you're interested in seeing when I got Gwen back in 2017, you can check out the haul and transformation video I think I have from when I got her for $2. There is a written tutorial with photos on my Flickr if you want to reference those steps there. You don't need a Flickr to view it. I'll link it below. And until next time, love your dolls, love yourself, and love your life.